Alright everybody, today's lesson, adding and subtracting decimals. As you can see here, I have two tips for you that you should do when you're adding and subtracting decimals. The first one is that we're going to use the vertical format, which is basically just like we did when we were comparing. We want to stack these numbers on top of each other, and we're going to line them up according to the decimal points. That's probably the most important thing that I can say right there. Line up the decimal points. So if we have something like 13.45 and we're going to add something like 2.6, the important thing is that these decimal points line up above and below each other, because when we do that, then we line up our numbers and we're able to add and subtract properly. Okay, here we go. Example 1, we're going to dive right in. So solve. Part A, we're going to add 6.047 plus 13.46, and then we have part B there also, which is 9 minus 5.28. And again, so we're going to start with part A. I'll do these with you guys. First thing, most important, is that we're going to line up the decimal point. So start by putting in our decimal point, and the first number is going to be 6.047. And then the second number, again, I want to make sure that that decimal point is lined up here above and below each other. And the second number then, if I fill in, is 13.46. Okay? And just like I said in the lesson the other day is, I really ask you guys, write bigger than what you normally do. You want to make sure that your numbers are nice and large and they're spread out so that you know which ones line up exactly. Okay, then when we do this, I can add my 0 in, just like we did when we were comparing. I want to make sure everything lines up, and then we're going to go ahead and add these. Okay, so starting on the right, if I do this first, 7 plus 0 is going to give me 7. Okay, I have the 4 plus 6, which gives me 10. So I carry the 1. 4 plus 0 is 4, plus that 1 is 5. The decimal point comes straight down into my answer here. 6 plus 3 gives me 9. And finally, I just have this 1. So my final answer is 19.507. Okay, and again, biggest thing for me is lining up the decimal point. Make sure that they're stacked on top and below each other. Make sure all your numbers line up, and then you're able to do the problem. The biggest thing that I see kids do wrong is that they try to write too tiny. The numbers don't line up exactly, and then they end up adding the wrong numbers together. Okay, part B here. We'll change colors. Part B, we have the number 9. So first of all, this whole number 9, remember when we have a whole number, even if it looks like there's no decimal point there, I know the decimal point is to the right of the number. Okay, so it's like 9 point, and I can put a 0 in there if I want. Okay, and then we're going to take away 5.28. Again, the decimal points have to be above and below each other. So this becomes 5.28. And because I want to make sure that we have the same amount of decimal places, I'm going to fill in my extra 0 here. And now we can go ahead and do this. Okay. The first number here, the 0 and the 8. Well, I can't do 0 minus 8. Okay. So that tells me that I have to borrow. I can't borrow from this 0 here. So I have to go all the way over to the 9, borrow from that. So that becomes an 8, which makes that 0 a 10. Then I can borrow from the 10. So that becomes a 9. And then finally this 0 becomes a 10. So 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 2 is 7. Here's my decimal point. So I can bring that straight down to my answer. And then finally 8 minus 5 gives me 3. Final answer, 3.72. Okay? And that's the big thing. Make sure you line up the decimal points. Add your zeros in so that they have the same amount of decimal places. Borrow if you need to. And go from there. Okay guys, here's one for you to try. So example 2, evaluate 6.7 plus r minus t when r equals 2.14 and t equals 5.2. Go ahead, pause the video, try it on your own. Okay, she'll be back from doing it yourself. First thing I'm going to do here is go ahead, I'm going to rewrite this expression, the 6.7 plus r minus t, but I'm going to plug in our values for our r and t. So when I do this, it becomes 6.7 plus r, but I know r is 2.14, and then it's going to be minus my t, which is 5.2. Okay, we know from order of operations that adding and subtracting go together, so I want to work left to right. And the first thing I see here when I work from left to right is this addition in here, the 6.7 plus 2.14. So I'm going to start by doing that. I'm going to write off to the side here. 6.7, and I'm going to add to that 2.14. Again, I want to make sure my decimal points line up here. Since there aren't the same amount of decimal places, I'm going to add my 0 on there to make sure I'm doing it right. Now I can go ahead and add. So 0 plus 4 is 4. 7 plus 1 is 8. Here's my decimal point. The 6 plus the 2 is 8, so that's 8.84. Now remember, that's just the first part of the problem, the 6.7 plus the 2.14. Now what I have to do is take this 8.84, and now I still have to do this last part, which is the minus 5.2. So minus, again, make sure that your decimal points line up. So there's my decimal point. I put in the 5.2. Okay, I'm going to fill in my 0 to make sure we have the same amount of decimal places. And now I can start subtracting. 4 minus 0 is 4. 8 minus 2 is 6. 8 minus 5 is 3. There's our final answer, 3.64. Okay? Again, if you have questions, call me over, and we can go through it together. Last thing we got to talk about today is estimating. Okay, so we're still adding and subtracting decimals, but what we're going to be doing is estimates. We're not finding exact answers. It's kind of like when you're walking through the grocery store and you realize, okay, I want to buy this candy bar that's $1.19. Well, that's pretty close to $1. And then you want to buy that Gatorade that's $1.89. Well, that's pretty close to $2. So you're saying, well, the candy bar is pretty close to $1. The Gatorade's pretty close to $2. We can add that together. You know you're going to be spending about $3. You're not getting an exact answer. You're estimating to find out, what you're going to be close to. So here we go. When estimating, it says round each number to the nearest whole number. So when I look at this, this first one, it says 3.84. Here's kind of what you're doing. The whole number part is 3. And basically what I'm saying is 3.84, is that closer to 3 or is it closer to 4? Because I know 3.84 is between 3 and 4. I just basically want to say which one is it closer to. Okay, I know that 3.5 is exactly halfway between 3 and 4. Since the 3.84 is a little more than that, that tells me that that whole number is closer to 4. Okay, then when I look at the 5.21, again, the whole number's a 5. I know 5.21 is between 5 and 6. But because it's a 5.2, okay, I know 5.5 is halfway. 5.2 is a little lower than that, so that means 5.21 is closer to the whole number 5. So all we're doing by estimating is rounding those both to the nearest whole number. I do 4 plus 5, which gives me 9. Okay. Same thing when you're subtracting. When I see the 5.78, okay, 5.7 is a little more than 5.5, which is halfway, so that says it's going to go up. 5.78 is closer to 6, and then I'm going to take away 2.63. And again, the 2.6, I know 2.5 is halfway, so 2.6 is a little more than that, which means 2.63, pretty close to the number 3, and I subtract. 6 minus 3 gives me 3. And that's all you're doing when you're estimating. You're taking the decimals, you're basically rounding to the nearest whole number, and then doing your adding and subtracting. Okay, last problem. Example 3. I want you guys to estimate this, 8.79 plus 7.29 plus 7.89, and I want you to estimate this and add them together. So pause the video, do it yourself, come on back. Okay, here we go, 8.79. Okay, 8.79, I know it's between 8 and 9, pretty close to 9, so I'm going to estimate that to be 9. The second number, 7.29, I know 7.5 is halfway, so 7.2 is less than that. That tells me that this is closer to 7. And then finally the last one here, 7.89, is more than halfway, 7.5, so that goes up. It's going to become 8. And then we're simply going to add these three things together. So 9 plus 7 gives me 16. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that last 8 on there. 16 plus 8 is going to give me 24. And there is our estimated answer. Again, it's not an exact answer, but it tells you what the answer should actually be close to. Okay, that's our lesson.